Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lincolnshire Wolds on this fine spring morning. I must apologise for me seemingly going incognito. I woke up with what is atrocious bed hair, so I just grabbed the first hat that was going. And if I take my sunglasses off, I pretty much have to squint. So it does look like I'm a little bit in disguise this morning. So I've been doing a couple of dog walk videos of late. Some have gone on to the Patreon system. So for everybody who is a patron of the site, thank you very, very much. Your income is hugely, hugely appreciated and helps us to keep doing the things that we require, or that we enjoy doing, and that you require to complete your overwhelming support of Lincoln City. However, today's quite a nice day. The dog looks like he's up for it. So I thought, why not do a general dog walk for all Lincoln fans who follow the Stacey West, just to have a little bit of a chat, really, in the comments. There are two huge pieces of news this morning. What's really inspired me is I had to do a voice note for Ollie at Salopcast. Really like Salopcast, had a great relationship with them over the years. They've been really complimentary of the work we do, and I'm also complimentary of the work they do. Fanalysis is what it's called, isn't it? Where supporters produce the analysis now rather than local media, and Salopcast are one of the very best. And they have asked me this morning about Michael Appleton. So it's kind of a domino effect. So we ought to start all the way at the beginning. April 12th, Lincoln was set to face Shrewsbury, and that meant a homecoming for a Lincoln City legend in Gareth Ainsworth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but off the top of my head, 98 appearances, 44 goals, I believe, including his hat-trick against Scarborough in his penultimate appearance, which was his final home appearance. We drew 3-3. He's gone on to have a great career as a player and a manager, particularly having success with Wycombe Wanderers. Moving up when he felt he'd take Wycombe probably as far as he could to QPR. It didn't really work there. I'm not sure Gareth Ainsworth's brand of football works in the Championship as well as John Beck's did in the old Division 1, Division 2, whatever it was, back in the 80s and 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So struggled at QPR, but he was back in business this year at Shrewsbury. Now, I said when he went to Shrewsbury, I didn't think he would keep them up, but I did think that he would get them up next season. And that's kind of how I saw Gareth Ainsworth progressing at Shrewsbury. You know, he made signings in the winter window, including Verdane Oliver, which kind of fit his strategy: get the big man up top, look to stick, get some players in and around. They looked all right when they played us. They got a vital win, but it hasn't really happened since Christmas. Then this week, from nowhere really, he ditches Shrewsbury and goes to Gillingham. Now, it was very un-Gareth-like because he's known for his loyalty. Certainly during his time at Wycombe, he stayed put quite a bit, so he's known for his loyalty. And yet the Shrewsbury press release that came out has basically questioned his integrity, more or less, saying he wanted to go. We tried to make him stay, he wouldn't. Gillingham wouldn't meet his release clause, he still wanted to go. As soon as Gillingham met the release clause, then he's gone. We expected a long career from him, etc., etc. Shrewsbury fans will feel aggrieved, and rightly so, because I think if you're going down into League Two, which they are, don't think there's any doubt about that whatsoever, having Gareth Ainsworth at the helm and having had him there 6 months and having kind of got a glimmer of a squad that he can work with puts you in a good position. Because let me tell you, very, very few teams, if any, go down out of this division and come straight back up. I mean, who's challenging for promotion this year? Walsall, Bradford, Wimbledon, Colchester, Grimsby. None of those went down last season. It's a really, really hard league. Even with 4 promotion places, it's a hard league to try and get back out of. But they were on good footing for it, I felt, to at least give it a go, to at least be going, look, we can go back in this division and be top 7. Gareth Ainsworth knows League Two. You know, his blueprint might not work at QPR, but it absolutely 100% works in League Two. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. And Gillingham know that as well. Now, Gillingham, people were saying it was a bit of a surprise, but when you think about it, it's actually a really sensible move by Ainsworth, however his reputation comes out of it. So he goes to Gillingham, who logistically are not unlike Wickham. Outside the M25, in striking distance of London, which gives you potential to tap into player loans. I remember Paul Smith, one player that he took on loan at Wickham, who did particularly well. I'm sure there were plenty of others. So he can fish into that market that he already knows well. Having worked at Wickham for so long, he's likely to have attended lower league games, for instance. There, he's likely to have attracted the attention of certain players. He's watched them through his career. He understands that area probably better than he does the Northwest. There's no disrespect. And I think location is a key here. I think it is a little bit of a factor. He would have been at Wickham for a long while. He was at QPR before that. Despite being born in Blackburn, despite being a northern lad, he's probably nice and comfortable now in the south. So there is that. I also think that Gillingham are better placed next season for a promotion push. Even with you going down and staying in Shrewsbury, it's going to be a tough task. Shrewsbury's takeover hasn't happened yet. There's still question marks over the ownership, over what's happening behind the scenes. There's an element of uncertainty. I think it's the period of November that's still going on. There's none of that at Gillingham. The Gallinsons own the club. They invested this season in trying to get out of the division. It hasn't particularly happened. Next season, if you put Gillingham and Shrewsbury side by side, toe to toe, Gillingham are the club that are more likely to be challenging for promotion than Shrewsbury. They already know League Two. They've been down there for a couple of seasons now. So player-wise, coaching-wise, staff-wise, ownership-wise, they are acclimatised to League Two. And for me, that does put you in a better position for a push up the table if circumstances are correct. And I think at Gillingham, they probably are a little bit better than they are at Shrewsbury. And look, which is the bigger club? For me, you put Gillingham and Shrewsbury side by side. They're similar sized clubs to us, to Bristol Rovers, to Oxford United, potentially. If those clubs got into the Championship, you'd be looking at 10, 12, 15,000. If they're in League Two, you could be looking as low as 3,000 or 4,000. That's football. So they're not particularly different sized clubs. If I had to pick one, say which is the bigger club, I'd probably say Gillingham, and I don't want that to be offensive to Shrewsbury. But do you know what? In terms of actual historical success and potential, if you asked which is the bigger club out of us and Gillingham, I think Gillingham. So they're a big club. And they're overshadowed by Bradford and Notts County. So that's kind of defending Gareth Ainsworth, and not because he's a Lincoln icon or anything like that. I can just understand why he's made the move. I can absolutely understand why Shrewsbury fans are not happy. Saw somebody reposting his press conference from when he first joined. He's coming in for the long haul, all that sort of stuff. So it will sting. I think there's more to this. I really do. Knowing the type of person that Gareth Ainsworth is, and not like knowing him personally, but just through time, through history, through his stints with Wickham and QPR and all that sort of stuff. This is uncharacteristic of him, I think. So, to be fair, I think there's a little bit more to it. But that means April the 12th, he ain't coming to Sincil Bank. So who is coming to Sincil Bank? Well, no doubt many of you will have seen by now. But they have turned to another former Lincoln City manager in order to, and I'm not going to say save their season, because their season is about as salvageable as the Titanic was in 1914. That means it's at the bottom of the ocean, fucking gone. So Shrewsbury are gone, but till the end of the season, they brought in Michael Appleton. Now, this was a real surprise for me. First of all, and I'm going to reiterate what I said to Ollie on Salopcast this morning, I like Michael Appleton and everybody knows it. I think Michael Appleton's reign at Sincil Bank may be one of the most divisive, but I also think he's one of the most underrated. I think putting us in the top 5 of the division into the 2021 season was a massive achievement. I know that we came from first and second and tumbled out of it in the end. I do think that was a big achievement. Taking us to within one game of the Championship was a huge achievement. And the second season, it was just all a little bit of a mess. There were reasons for it. There was obviously his illness pre-season. I think the transfer window wasn't great. We missed out on Morgan Whittaker, who we were hoping to get. I remember an interview where we were told he was a good and he was going to be a good signing, and that signing didn't materialise, and that kind of left us a little bit short in the first half of the season. If you remember, Dan Lunderloo was injured, played against Man United, injured. It was just a messy season, and Michael's personality is not one that tries to salvage anything. It is what it is. He's a no-nonsense kind of character. And that didn't resonate with supporters. And this is at a time where also supporters, I think, generally were quite pissed off because we didn't get to see the 2021 season. If we'd all been in the stadium in those games where we were beating MK Dons 4-1. And, can you hear? Sorry, Mark. I don't know if you can hear the win. My apologies if you can. But where we were winning all of those games, and if supporters had been there, I think it would have been huge. Can you imagine that night against Liverpool? Okay, we lost 7-2. Can you imagine the cheers when Monsma and Eden scored? Had we managed to be in the stadium, it would have been phenomenal. So yeah, a little bit disappointing that we missed out. You then go into the next season thinking, here we go again, and actually things have changed completely. And the opening day was ironically against Gillingham, who were a major player in this situation. We drew 1-1. I think it was the racism scandal with Cohen Bramall, and then Josh Griffiths dropped a howler, I think, away at Wickham, and we just didn't get off to a good start, and it went downhill really from there. I think fans got on Appleton's back. He ain't somebody that's going to take that with the greatest of respect. He's not one that will try and address fans' concerns. He's not one that's going to come over and punch the air when you win. He's not one that's going to be kicking buckets across the touchline when we lose. He's a one size fits all. This is me, and if you don't like me, you're done and dusted. And that didn't resonate with fans either. Not going to say all the football was good. We tried to play possession football at times. It didn't particularly work. We didn't get the A-star loans. We had to be, the owners or the club had to back Michael in the transfer window to get us over the line with Morgan Whittaker and John Marquis and Bricknell Coffey and Liam Cullen and Ben House and Charlie Kendall. We made a lot of signings and we stayed up. And I think that Michael left as well was probably something that some people didn't really identify with. He didn't sneak out the back door, but it was hours after we beat Crewe on the final day of the season. He left, and that was that, wasn't it? So his reign isn't one that's always looked upon fondly, but I think that history will probably treat him a little bit better. The fact is, after us, he went on to manage Blackpool, similar size club to us, but it was in the Championship, and Charlton, big club. So he got 2 big jobs afterwards. So I have the utmost respect for Michael Appleton as a person, and that's partly because I'm lucky. I got to know him a little bit. I did a couple of interviews with him. He was always honest. And one of the comments that I've heard from people afterwards in and around the club were a little bit too honest. Sometimes they should not sugarcoat something, but sometimes you have to think about how you answer a question. Sometimes you have to be a little bit diplomatic. And I think potentially that was one of the issues that Michael had, was that it was just that one size fits all. It was literally, he told you the truth, and if you didn't like it, that was it. And that was in stark contrast to the man that followed him, where I knew what was truth and what was not. And again, I did experience that. So I was lucky in that respect. However, do I think that Michael Appleton on a short-term contract at Shrewsbury is a good idea? I don't understand it. Now, all I can think is that the short-term contract is to allow them some more negotiation before they appoint him permanently. Because if he's coming in for the last 6-7 games, however many's left, and Shrewsbury are expecting anything other than relegation, then the owner is deluded, utterly deluded. Neil Warnock couldn't come in. Pep Guardiola couldn't come in and save Shrewsbury right now. So if the short-term contract is with a view at the end of the season to making a different appointment, it's baffling for me why Michael would take that. There must be the promise of something coming at the end of it. There has to be. There has to be. Now, his fit is a little different to Shrewsbury's kind of current model as well, I think, because Ainsworth's built a squad for kind of a long ball game, a target man striker, and get it forward quite quickly, attritional. Michael's is the exact polar opposite of that. This is an appointment that is in such sharp contrast. It's almost like the Burton at the beginning of the season, whoever they sacked at the end of last season. I can't remember whose Marmary was still there, and bringing Mark Robinson in. They went for the full overhaul, and it didn't work. So I can only assume that Shrewsbury want to play a bit of football next season. They brought Michael in as let's see if we fit And whatever happens in these 6 games, it's really more like a prolonged job interview. It has to be. I can't understand any more thinking behind it than that. Now, do I think Michael Appleton, as a long-term prospect, is a good signing for a club like Shrewsbury Town? I can see why he's a better fit there than he was at a Blackpool or a Charlton. Because at Blackpool, at Charlton, there's a bit of money to spend. You could bring players in. And okay, Blackpool weren't rich by Championship standard, but if they want to take the best of League One, and no other Championship club does, they can. Blackpool were the sort of club that would sign this summer, for instance, a Paudie O'Connor or an Ethan Arahan or something like that. So they'll fish in those waters when Michael was there. When he was at Charlton, he had a bigger budget than most. When he was at Lincoln, okay, when our wages were level, he had a budget, but not a bigger budget than anybody else. At Oxford, he was top end of the division, but certainly didn't have a bigger budget than anyone else. What he was then doing was working on his coaching. He was working on bringing players through. He was working on developing players, getting the right blend and doing it on a budget. And he did well. His second season was the only one we saw, but he did well at Lincoln in that first season. He did well at Oxford United. He didn't do well at Charlton. He didn't do well at Blackpool. So if that evidence is to be believed, there is potential for him to do well at Shrewsbury in League Two. He does understand League Two because he's got out of it before. He understands League One because he's almost got us out of it before. He does have good football contacts. Maybe that's something else that Shrewsbury are thinking about. Bear in mind, this is the manager who was instrumental in bringing Morgan Rogers to us. West Brom connections, knowing Morgan from when he was at West Brom, following through. I think he was friends with the Man City loan manager, potentially. I can't remember specifically. Brennan Johnson, obviously, he was friends with David Johnson. So there was elements of our recruitment that people say was the best ever. We had these great players who have gone on to play for England and Wales and play in the Premier League. Michael Appleton brought them in, was instrumental in bringing them in along with Jez and the recruitment team. So I can see the attraction there. There is this idea that he also is really good at bringing youngsters through. Now, that's questionable in some respects. Because Sean Rowan, for instance, yes, Michael brought him through, but then he was frozen out completely. He did help us develop Teo Eden. He did help us develop Anthony Scully. So working with top-end youngsters, absolutely. Working with youngsters coming through at Lincoln City, and I'm not saying Sean Rowan's not top-end, by the way, because he is, but you know what I mean? He hasn't come through a Premier League academy. There wasn't as much evidence, I don't think, of that. He did put a lot of trust in Freddie Draper. He played Fred quite early. And he always said, he once said to me that if Freddie wasn't our starting number 9 in 2 or 3 seasons' time, then he was doing his job wrong. So he certainly has an eye on player development. And I think, again, a club like Shrewsbury potentially need to be able to do that well. It's something we've identified as hesitate to say a model, but producing players from our academy, not necessarily who all go on to play for Lincoln City, but that do go on to be professional footballers elsewhere. And that has obviously happened with the likes of Alicia Huey, who's just moved to Walsall, I believe, with Hayden Cann, with a couple of the other young players as well who have come through. So I can see the rationale behind the point in Michael Appleton. And I think it's a decent appointment. Location-wise, it's closer to his home. I think it's a decent appointment for the future. I'm not saying it's an outstanding one. When I look at Ainsworth and Gillingham, I go, that fits. I can see success. When I look at Appleton and Shrewsbury, I go, I can understand the thinking behind it. I'm not sure how it'll work out. I want it to work out because I like Michael Appleton. I'll be honest, I want it to work out because I like Shrewsbury. And it's always a bit controversial, isn't it, where a supporter of another club says, I like this club. But I do like Shrewsbury. Those who know their Gary Hutchinson history, and that's probably me and my mum and dad, know that I spent quite a bit of time in Shrewsbury around the turn of the century back in 2001. I had a girlfriend there. I almost moved there. I was made incredibly welcome by everybody in Shrewsbury. I used to go and watch them in pre-season when Lincoln weren't playing. I didn't live there. I was just going there every weekend or two. Really good relationship with their mascot, Len, Rory the Lion. It was just nice, and I really enjoyed my time in Shrewsbury. And I was actually offered a job there. I almost moved there, and then things went wrong at last minute. But it's always it's a town and a football club that I do have a special place for. I played on Gay Meadow as poacher in a big mascot event. I went to, I don't know what they call it now, Montgomery Waters, Crown Meadow, New Meadow, whatever their new stadium is, played on that as poacher as well. It's just a nice place. I want it to work. Like Michael Appleton going there, it's almost like, you know, when Lasse Sorensen, when Hakeem Bedelican played against Charlton, ironically against Michael Appleton, of course. I wanted him to come on. You want him to do well. So I want it to go well for Shrewsbury. I want them, if they go down this season, which they will, I want them to come back up. I want them to fight. I want Michael Appleton to be the darling of their supporters. Here's a controversial statement. I want Michael Appleton to be more successful at Shrewsbury than Gareth Ainsworth is at Gillingham. Gareth Ainsworth may well be a Lincoln legend and a great guy and all that sort of thing. But I don't have any affinity with Gillingham at all. In fact, quite the opposite with a lot of the stuff that Kane's come out of there. Clashes with Lincoln over the years. So I don't know. I don't know if all comments are getting through. It's saying probably not here, and the wind is absolutely shocking. So it may be ruining the audio. So it's probably time for me to sign off. But I just thought I wanted to dog walk. I really appreciate the 20-30 people that have managed to watch live while we have been on air. I have only had one comment come through. I suspect therefore that Keith Clifton, hello Keith. So a couple of comments are now coming through. If the wind is too loud, my sincere apologies. There's not a lot I can do about that up here, especially not if I turn you to walk into. You can see Stenagott Tower there in the distance, so it is particularly windy up here. So this weekend, Wycombe Wanderers, honesty shout, I might not actually get to see the game. I've got John Booth says you can hear me clearly, so I will continue talking for a little while. Yeah, I may not get to actually see the game. I'm booked in for to meet an old friend for a couple of drinks, and I think we've got to get the train from Raisin at 5:15. So I'll be able to watch the first half, and on the second half, I've got a 20-mile run to do in the morning as well. So it could be a tight one. But rest assured, I'll get a chance to watch it back on Mother's Day. I'm sure my mum doesn't want to see me. And we'll have a look from there. Our season's petering out, but the football season across the leagues is looking really interesting. I think in League One, you can write off Shrewsbury, Cambridge and Crawley. Burton need a couple of big results, but otherwise it could be the bottom four. That has been pretty much the bottom four all season, will be the bottom four. They've been the four worst teams. They've all taken points from us, of course. At the top, don't really care. As long as Birmingham go, it'd be nice to see Wrexham go as well. I don't know if anybody saw the news today. Huddersfield Town's, some season tickets at Huddersfield Town have gone up almost 50%, I think it said. And their chairman is close. My dog's doing. The chairman is close to announcing losses of £20 million, between 15 and £20 million. You look at Wrexham, their losses are only 2.7 million this year, but their turnover was eye-watering. I can't remember the actual number now. I didn't intend to talk about it, but it's double-digit millions, and I'm not talking about 10. I think it was like 30 or 40 million. They've called it 2.7 million. Additional wages, almost £1 million uplift, £873,000 from them coming from League Two to League One. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous that these numbers are coming out when you think about how we're doing. Yes, we lost more money than Wrexham, but when you see what they've got coming in, oh my lord, it's no real surprise, I don't think, that we keep talking about budget, we keep talking about wages, we keep talking as a club. This is about where we are in the table, and as John says, when you see the chaos in the football world, it makes you really appreciate the stability we have at Lincoln. And do you know what? That kind of fits with the whole narrative of what I've been talking about, doesn't it? We don't have a manager who's gone, at last minute, I'm going to go here. But it happened last season. Steve Evans, Stevenage jumping ship to Rotherham, Gareth Ainsworth, Shrewsbury jumping ship to Gillingham. It just feels like we have an air of stability, and some people may well think that stability is not a good thing. I saw a post from somebody I've got time for on social media yesterday who said, 5 wins in however many, which is what Michael's got. It's still cause for concern. He's still a manager close to the sack. I don't think he is. I don't think Michael Scabala is anywhere near the sack at all. I don't think it will have crossed our board's mind at all. So there's stability there. Fans might not always appreciate it, but then those same fans will, of course, look at things like Shrewsbury or Gillingham and Michael Appleton going in. Oh, it's a basket case. It's this, it's that. We'd achieve nothing by sacking Michael Skubala, because even if we are on a bad run of form, he's certainly a better manager than those in the bottom 4 or 5. He has to be. He's certainly a better manager than all the ones that have been fired in League One this season, or perceived to be a better manager by the owners. And that's because in football, the people involved in football understand the budget table. We don't talk about the budget table a huge amount. We try to now as supporters, I think, but we don't a lot, because it's boring and it's nothing to do with football. We talk about performances. We talk about the eye test. We talk about being entertained. We talk about all that sort of stuff. But actually in football, one of the models of judging a manager's success is where he is in his actual table compared to his budget table. And I've been told this time and again before Michael Skubala, that if you're a manager who's 19th in the budget table and you put your team 10th, that's why you will be eyed by potential other clubs. And it's why some managers never get mentioned. Like whenever there's been a championship club this season with a vacancy, have you ever heard Chris Davies mentioned potentially as that manager? So he's Birmingham manager in League One? Of course not, because his budget is top and he's top. So he's doing what he should be doing. You won't have heard Wrexham. Very few have said Phil Parkinson for a job in the Championship. Well, why? He's on the verge of a 3rd successive promotion. What a phenomenal achievement that'll be. But that's because each season, his budget's been top or second, and he's been top or second. So he's only achieving what he should be achieving. And I think it's pertinent to understand that. It's why when Michael Duff was at Cheltenham, for instance, they were never near never near the top of the budget table, but they were absolutely near the top of the League Two table when he was there, which is exactly why a club will go, he's doing well there. And the problem, I think, sometimes with these managers is when they're not very far down. I hope you can still hear me. The wind is shocking. When they're away down the budget table, they work in one way. And when they then go to another club with a budget, they have to work in another way. And I think that's really important for the likes of Steve Evans. Like when Steve Evans is on a budget, he does a good job. Don't think anyone can deny that. Stevenage, he did a good job when he was on a budget. He did a relatively good job in League One when he was on a budget at Gillingham. But as soon as you give him money to spend, he's a car crash. An absolute car crash, because he doesn't know how to do it. Rotherham, this year, I don't understand why Rotherham are not more of a talking point, because their failure has been catastrophic. It has. They should have been top 5 with the players they were bringing in, the budget they have. Catastrophic their season has been, and somehow it flies under the radar. There's hardly any talk of him getting the sack. Shocks me. So Malk says he's worked in Shrewsbury, done the folk festival, great place, similar to Lincoln. It is similar to Lincoln in many ways. Why is it sunny where I am but cloudy down the road in Tetford? I didn't realise you were in Tetford, Malk. I come through Tetford every month or so to the dog gets groomed at Ashby Purorum. So do you know what? It's always like that up here. So I was teaching in Lincoln yesterday morning, sunny up here, really warm, just put a shirt on, no jacket, got into Lincoln. It was bloody foggy and cold. Baffles me. It's like a different climate up here, mate. It really is. Keith Clifton says people forget Graham Taylor didn't win any of his first 11 games. He'd been sacked these days. He may well have been. And look, I can understand some supporters questioning the run that we've been on recently. You know, and it's easy to make excuses. It's easy to say, yeah, but the budget table. It's easy to say, yeah, but we've lost our best player to injury in Ethan Rowan. We lost our leading scorer to injury in Bailey Cadamartri. We lost our captain to suspension for 2 games. We've lost this player, that player. We've had injuries. Everybody's had injuries. I think we've probably square pegs in round holes. Said about the summer recruitment, it just felt a little like in the summer the recruitment was actually more geared towards a 4-2-3-1 than it was a 3-5-2. And we had far too many players who have been off form. And I'm not saying these are bad players or that they've been bad all the time, but up until recently, Ben House, Rico Hackett, Ethan Hamilton, Conor McGrandles, these are players that were coming into the team playing well one week and not playing well the next week, and that was a problem. We're making bad decisions in certain areas. I think things have picked up since James Collins has come in. He's become a focal point for the attack. We've gone 4-2-3-1, and it's interesting because I always find it amusing how people make I hope it's not too windy, it's shocking here, how people make facts fit their argument. I do it. We all do it. But I've noticed recently an argument on Twitter where people are saying our recent form is good. And people saying, well, it's all right. Well, actually, I think if you look at our recent wins and draws, it's top 10 quality over the last 5 or 6 games. Bear in mind that includes Birmingham City, who we lost to on a penalty. Should have been a draw. Coulda, shoulda. So we're probably on top 10 form now. People are saying, yeah, but I'm talking about the whole season. I'm talking about where we've come from in the playoffs, early doors, to where we are now. And yet, when we're on a bad run of form and we're falling down the table and we go, well, we started really well, people are, yeah, but our form's relegation. That's the form that got such and such a sack. And I'd say it annoys me, but I'd be a fucking hypocrite, wouldn't I? Excuse my language, because I do it. I look for the underlying numbers that prove things are going right and going wrong. I look for things that fit my argument. I try a little harder these days to look for things that disprove my argument as well. When I did the attendance thing the other week, I didn't know that Michael Scabala's attendance was average attendance was 600 better than Mark Kennedy, and that may be because of away teams. Maybe it may not be, but so I wasn't looking for the number to fit there. But generally, I will. I discount form, if I'm honest, when people are using it negatively, because I think if you go, over the last 6 games we've been terrible. Yeah, but we might play Leyton Orient with 110 on the spin, rather than playing a Leyton Orient at the beginning of the season who had lost 6 on the spin. And even though it's the same team you're playing, you're still likely to get a different outcome because confidence and all that sort of thing is a major factor. What I think is that we've never really been troubled by relegation. I mean, it was the beginning of March where I first saw the sleepwalk into relegation posts this season, and they started back in December a couple of years ago. So we've never ever been in danger of dropping out of this division this season, not once. And that's an achievement when we're 19th in the budget table. Ding, ding, ding. Another one of the keywords. But it is an achievement, and people may not see that because what they see is, well, last season we were 7th, this season we should be higher. I never saw us being in the playoffs this season with what came into the division. We started so well. So I know this has kind of gone a little bit off tangent. My hat is in serious danger of being blown off. It really is. I don't know how you guys are getting good audio. So I'm going to wrap up. It started as a discussion, really, didn't it, about Michael Appleton and Gareth Ainsworth. It's gone into a general Lincoln discussion. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to come and watch. I appreciate those of you as well that are patrons. It's a huge, huge help. Just a couple of quid a month. We have our Discord channel, and it helps me keep up with costs and all that sort of stuff, as well as putting on certain events for Patreons only. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we'll have something to celebrate on Sunday. It might be the difference between finishing 14th and 11th this season and, sod promotion and relegation. That's where it gets really exciting. Top half or bottom half, who knows? I'll see you all again soon. Thanks a lot.